Hello and welcome to this new part in my series on music theory, sort of specifically for electronic musicians, but general musicians as well. It's going to work out for that. Quick reminder, there is a book that accompanies this video series which you can get by supporting me on Patreon, or if you just want a nice warm fuzzy feeling and you want to support the channel and help keep it going, you can support me on Patreon. Also, if you're not bothered about the book, but there are other free things on there, just free stuff. Go and check it out on Patreon. Links to that are in the descriptions below. Usual things, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell button so you get notified as and when I upload new videos. And right, without any more faffing about, let's get into it. This one is about keys and scales. Keys and scales are basically the same thing. But I'll try and sort of explain the difference between them. So you may have often heard people talking about what key a certain song is. So a key is basically a collection of notes that sound good together. So before we get into kind of those keys and scales, let's just think about our piano over here. If we played every single note, okay, white notes and black notes between C and C, that would be called a chromatic scale. That's the C chromatic scale with 12 notes in there. So that would be these. Okay, and then we go back up to C again at the end. So out of those 12 notes, there are different combinations of 8 notes that sound good together. Okay, and they are our key. So if we stick with our old friend C major, because it's the easy one to remember and it's the one we've been sort of looking at throughout this series so far, the 8 notes that sound good together are just all the white notes. Okay, so they would be the notes that are in the key of C major. So these notes are kind of classed as sounding in key, if you like. If we put some of the notes in that aren't in that key, it would sound out of key. So, I don't know, something like this. I mean, that actually didn't sound too bad, but there's certain combinations you'll find that just sort of sound horrible. So the combination of notes that we use will be dependent on our starting note, which is called our root note, which in that case was the C, because we were playing C major. Okay, so we've established that those notes, all the white notes, are the notes that are in the key of C major. So if we then play those in order, like I've just played, that is the scale of C major. So basically the notes that are in your key are the combination of 8 that sound good together, and the scale is basically just those notes played in order, either ascending or descending. It can go either way. Now don't think that that's the only combination of 8 notes starting on C that could work. There are loads of other different combinations that will take in different combinations of white notes and black notes, depending on the key, the scale that you're playing in, and they will give you different flavors to your scale and your key, and then eventually to the song that you're playing. So as we've covered in previous episodes, major scales generally are kind of happy, poppy. Minor scales are a little bit dark, and we've got lots of other ones as well that we'll look at in later episodes, like Lorien and Dorian and Phrygian and all these kind of things. And I'll go through a few of those different scales and the flavors that they bring to your song in later videos, so you can think, okay, I want to do a slightly dark kind of song. We're going to use whatever scale, and I'll try and give you some examples of songs that are in those scales as well. So if we want to just turn our attention then over to Ableton, let's just get this on full screen. So this is the scale of C major on the piano roll. Okay, so you can see we've got just the notes going all up every white note in the scale of C major. So I mentioned a minute ago about other combinations of notes that are going to sound good starting on C. Obviously we can start on any note, but we're just going to stick with C for now. So if we did C minor, and to be exactly 100% technical, it's C natural minor, because there are different minor scales as well. We'll stick with the piano roll for now. That would look like this. Okay, so you can see, hopefully from here, we've now got 3 of the black notes in here. So let's give this a play and you can hear the difference, hopefully, between major and minor. Okay, let's do major again. In fact, I have just noticed that C major one is an octave higher, so let's just whack that down. Octaves don't exist in your world yet because we've not covered those yet, but we're going to do octaves later. So let's play them again just so they're at the same starting note of C3. Okay, there's C major, C minor. So one way of converting not one way, the way of converting a major scale to a minor scale is you flatten the 3rd, the 6th and the 7th note. So if we go through the C major scale again over on the piano, we've got C, D, E, F, G, A, B and then back to C. So our 3rd note is E. Okay, so that one we would flatten, so it would go down to an E flat, so that would go to there. Okay, so that would be the 3rd one. So then we've got 4th, 5th, 6th is an A, so we'd flatten that down to A flat, and the 7th is the B, we'd flatten that down to there. So our C minor scale now gives us that. So major, minor. Yeah, get that right. Okay. And that works with obviously any scale. If you know the notes in G major and you want to get it down to G minor, you would flatten the 3rd, the 6th, and the 7th note. Which, if we go back over on to Ableton, you can see here we've got the black note there, and the black note there. Now, the difference on Ableton between what I was talking about there is they only show sharps. Okay, so we are actually flattening the notes, which means we're going down a half step or a semitone. But remember, as we looked at in previous episodes on this one, A flat is the same as G sharp. Okay, if we go from a G to there, okay, that gives us a G sharp. So just be aware of your sharps and flats, okay, which we've looked at previously. So keys are a way of basically sort of getting rid of notes that don't sound good together. Now, that's not to say you're not allowed to use notes that aren't in a specific key. You're not going to get arrested by the music theory police if you use a combination of 8 notes that aren't in any key that exists. If it sounds good to you, go with it. You know, at the end of the day, the rules, I always think rules are there. Let's go back to that screen. Rules are there to be broken. Get the right one on that one. And it's your music at the end of the day. So if it sounds good to your ears, go with it. Doesn't matter if it's not in a key or a scale that doesn't exist. We've also got chords as well, which is a combination of 2 or 3 or more notes played together. We're going to look at those in later chapters and so on, so don't worry about chords for now. So, kind of a quick recap on sort of how to think of keys and scales. If you imagine you got a deck of cards, right, and you throw them all on the floor and they're all mixed up, all your hearts, your clubs and all that kind of thing. If you sorted all the hearts out and they all kind of fit nicely together, that's your key. Okay, you've got rid of the notes that aren't in that group. And then if you just arrange those cards in order, ascending or descending, that is your scale. So that's kind of one way of thinking about keys and scales. So once we know which notes are in a certain key, that's when we can start to create our melodies by having longer notes, shorter notes, creating rhythms and this sort of thing. So we've established what notes are in C minor. If I go over onto this one, okay, let's go full screen for now. So all I've done is taken those same notes that were in the C minor scale and just kind of randomly put them in a different sequence like this, some long notes, some short notes, and you start to get some sort of okay, so I mean, obviously, it's not going to win any Grammys for the best melody in the world ever, but that's what I say. Take your starting point, work out what notes are going to be in your key, and then start to mess about with those long notes, short notes. That's going to give you your rhythm and your melodies and so on. The other thing to remember is if we use a note that's not in our key, it's going to sound a little bit off. So if we, I don't know, let's put that to a C sharp. Okay, so that it sounds horrible now. Okay, it sounds out of tune. It sounds like you can't play the piano. It's really what happens if you use notes that aren't in the key. Sometimes you do have what I would call a happy accident, and you find a note that does work when it shouldn't. If it does, go with it. That's absolutely fine. So we do have formulas for working out which notes would be in any given key based on the combination of tones and semitones, or half steps and whole steps. And we looked at those in the last episode, I think. I'm pretty sure that was in the last episode. I'll link that in the description if I can remember to do that. So if we just have a quick look at the two main scales, which are major and natural minor, which is often referred to just as minor. If we look at the combination of steps and half steps, whole steps, or whatever, we can easily work out which notes are in any scale. So let's stick with the C major scale again. Let's go back to there. So if we go through the C major scale, we're starting with our root note, often sometimes called the tone, or the tonic, sorry, not the tone, the tonic. So if we go up to an E, okay, that is a tone or a whole step. We've got another tone, sorry, that was the D. Go up to the E, we've got another whole step or tone. We've then got a half step, semitone, then a tone, then a tone, then a tone, then another semitone. So we have, starting from there, we've got tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. So I just remember that by just memorizing that TTS, TTTS, okay, TTS, TTTS. And these are written out in the book for you that accompanies this series. If you prefer to do it with the whole and half steps, it's basically whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And that means you can work out any scale, the keys, or any note, the notes that are in any key on any given starting note. So let's say we do it from F, okay, we do F major. So we've got tone, tone, semitone, okay, so we're going to have a black note there, and then we've got tone, 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 semitone. That gets us back to our F. So we can work out that we've got all the white notes and one black note in F, which is B flat. And by doing that, we can easily work out any scale. Now I'm going to show you how to do this in Ableton as well in a second if you don't want to work it out on the piano. But first of all, let's do the same process with a minor scale. So we've got a slightly different formula for a minor scale. And a good one to start with to work out that formula is A minor, because as we looked at previously, that is all the white notes, but starting on A. Okay, so if we look at what we've got this time in A minor, we've got A to B as a tone, then we've got a semitone, then we've got another tone, a semitone, a tone, and a tone. Okay, so it gives us a slightly different formula, which is, so we go from there, we've got T, a tone there, and then S, and then we've got T, T, S, T, T. So, I mean, it's how you want to break it up. An easy way to remember it is it's T, and then STT, STT. So T, STT, STT. And then if you remember the major scale is whatever it was, TSS, TT, TT, TTS, TTTS. Okay. So your minor scale is T, and then STT, STT. Or if you want to do it whole and half steps, it's whole, half. Well, it's if you do whole, and then it's half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Now we will look at how these two scales interact with each other, because there are, if you overlap them, they're basically coming out with the same formula at the end of the day in different ways. But again, we're going to look at that when we get into more advanced things later on. Now, if we go back over to Ableton, we can do exactly the same thing, and actually probably an easier way of working out our scales. Let's do the major scale first. So start with C major. Let's get this as big as we can. And all you got to do is put all the white notes in between C and C. We then highlight all of those, so you can either lasso them or just Control A. So let's say we want to work out the notes that are in F major that we looked at before. All we would do is take this note, we'd drag it down to our F, and then we can see the notes that we've got in F major. So we can see we've got this A sharp, B flat that we had previously. And we've got everything playing together. Let's stop that. Okay, so there's our F major. Okay, so if we wanted to, I don't know, let's do a random one. Let's do G sharp major. Okay, we'd start on G sharp, and we can see we've got G sharp, we've got an A sharp, we've got C, we've got C sharp, again sharps and flats, same thing, we've got a D, and so on. We can see that combination. So that's a really easy way of doing it. using your piano roll to work out what notes are in any scale. Now, there are other devices and tools that make that even easier to work out what are in any scale, but they might not always be available to you. So I think it's always good to learn the theory rather than relying a lot of the time on devices in Ableton and scale features on hardware and this kind of thing, although we will look at those in the next episode of this. Now, we can do exactly the same thing with the minor scale. Best place, again, to start off with is the A minor. And again, remember, this is the A minor natural harmonic, whatever one it's called. There are different minor scales, but we're going to stick with this one for now because that's kind of like the main one. So, again, to work out what notes are in any minor scale, start on an A, put a note in every white note, highlight them all. So if we go, let's go C minor, because we already know what notes are in this, and we can check that our theory works, and you can see that it does. We've got the third one there, we've got the sixth one and the seventh one there. So again, you can just move those notes around and work out which notes are in any starting key to give you that key, which is a bit of genius. I think it's a really useful way of doing that. So there's two ways of working out which notes are in your key. Remember those the formulas that we talked about, the combination of tones and tones and semitones, or whole steps and half steps, or if you've got a piano roll editor, you can work it out that way as well. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this episode. So as I mentioned a minute or two ago, there are devices that we can use on both hardware and in software that's going to help us work out very quickly and very easily which notes are in which scale, or help us play those notes. And we're going to look at those in the next chapter. There's a few different things we're going to have a look at in there. So that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. Keep an eye out for that. So hit that bell button so you get a notification when I upload this one. And usual things like subscribe, share the videos around. If you like what I do, give us a thumbs up. If you don't, then tough, whatever. And if you like acidy electronic kind of music, you can check my music out on Spotify and Apple Music and Deezer and everywhere else. And if you're feeling generous, then head over to Patreon and give me and the channel a little bit of support over there. It is all much appreciated. And thank you ever so much for watching, and I will see you in the next chapter. Thank you. Goodbye.